to,
I'll make you co-host.
okay. Do you want to make sure Bob will come soon?
Yeah, he should. Let me call him. Oh, here he comes.
Let me find a right one to show you. Hold on.
So are you guys actually in Kansas City?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Hold on. Let me find.
Hey, Bob.
Hi, so I don't know. It may be that you didn't hear anything I said. I'm not sure when I dropped out.
It cut out midstream, but then I just asked June or Nathan just to kind of give us a high level since then on what is the Mesonet from the big picture down to the micro scale. And so I just
Perfect.
gave June sharing authority.
Perfect.
Okay, you should be able to see my screen, right?
There it is.
Yes.
And let me go to full screen. Full screen.
Maybe a slideshow.
Yeah, need to go to slideshow, but yeah, hold on. Let me hide my center view.
Yep.
See the whole screen, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I will pretty quickly give you a very brief introduction of our New York State Mesonet. So what you see the picture is a real picture of one of our site in Catskill region, Tennisville. So I will talk a little bit about what they are. And I don't know whether, do you want to learn about how we started?
Sure.
I guess, okay. We started about 10 years ago, 2012. So, it's basically, we started the 3 reasons for why we need a New York State Mesonet. The first one is New York State has experienced and will continue to experience more of the extreme weather events. So I listed some of the billion-dollar weather events. The most recent one, the biggest one, is Hurricane Sandy. We started with the Tropical Storm Lee and Hurricane Irene. And they happened in 2011. There were a lot of flooding going on in upstate New York, but there was not enough observations for that. That's how we started. Then Hurricane Sandy happened. And so what we got is from the Hurricane Sandy Supplemental Fund for this network. Another thing is the second reason is based on studies. New York State is one of the most economically vulnerable states to the weather events. And then on my right-hand side, this just give you the map of what we had before New York State Mesonet. Basically, you see holes in Catskill region, Adirondack, Tucker Hills. And in addition, there was no soil temperature, soil moisture, and snow observations. So what happened is we said, okay, we worked with, we are located at State University of New York at Albany. We worked with the National Weather Service and our state emergency management, it's called the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. So we said, we want to build a high temporal, high spatial resolution network with more additional variables measurements. And then another thing is this network has to be robust for extreme weather events, right? And then the third thing is we want to build a very strong relationship with the decision makers and sectors who use our data. You guys can stop me anytime if you have any questions, all right? So this is just a very brief history. I already mentioned when we started, and then we got 30 million investment from the Hurricane Sandy supplemental fund, but that was just for building up this network. And then we were fully funded in April 2014. It took us about about 4 years for the whole network, build up the whole network. We were the first one station started August 9th of 2015. The last one was February 2018. So I'm not going into the details. And then here, just basically one page overview of what we are. And we are a network of 6 networks with a total 211 stations. The backbone of the network is a so-called standard network. Those are the blue dots. So every county has, most of them have 2 stations. So as you can see, they're much better spatial coverage. Basically, pretty much everybody can find their backyard weather station. And then all of the data are reported every 5 minutes. And all of the things is from the on-site data collection to quality control to archive to disseminate it to our website. It's about 2 minutes. The whole thing, everything's automatic. And so what does that site look like? This is a 10-meter tower by 10-meter fenced area. We measure all of the meteorology variables, temperature, humidity, pressure, wind speed, wind direction, but we also measure snow depths continuously. And then insulation, basically solar radiation, that's very important for solar energy. And then we also measure soil temperature and soil moisture at 3 levels underground. And we measure precipitation, basically, no matter whether it's snow or rain or ice. So it's completely operated under solar panel and cellular coverage. So every site we pay monthly fee, like our cell phone, how that works. So we talk a little bit about very briefly about 3 sub-networks. The first one is the profile network. What I show you, that's a tower. So basically it's surface meteorology variables. However, for weather or climate, you really want to know above ground what's going on. For our profile network, we have this a pretty expensive microwave radiometer that measure continuously pressure, temperature, humidity in the air up to 10 kilometers. Then we have a wind ladder. It's a laser-based technology, continuous measure both horizontal wind and vertical wind, both wind speed and the wind directions. So this is in terms of renewable energy, wind energy applications, definitely for weather forecasting. And then flux network is more for research. It's basically measure everything, energy exchange between the ground and the atmosphere. And then we have a special snow network. Besides the snow depths, we add a sensor to measure total water in the snow. That's very important for hydrological applications. And then come down to macronet. That might be something you guys are interested in. We have 2 macronet. As you can see, you kind of see the scales. The mesoscale is anywhere from a few miles to 100 miles. That's the scale we are talking about it. And then, macronet get to much smaller scale. We have one throughway network. For both those networks, we don't own them. They invested and for us to set them up and operate it and maintain them. Throughway is mainly in the west of New York along the highway throughway, and they want to see the road conditions and they also want to know like the snow conditions, whether variables. And this MicroNet is Con Edison utility company. They sponsored and they own it. We operate and maintain for them. So we have a total, they have total 17 stations. We already have 5 stations from our standard network. That means in New York City, we have total 22 stations. We are the most dense urban network in, at least in US. So that has been very useful to provide real-time data. Like past a few days, the weekends, there's flooding going on. Our precipitation data, rain gauge really provided very good data. So I'm going to skip all of, oh, maybe I want to see this. So who are using our data, who work with us? Basically everybody, state government, federal government, academic, and commercial sectors. Commercial sectors like forensic meteorology, hydrological, insurance, construction, and renewable energy, utilities, you can name it. Everybody needs, needs weather information. So we work with all of those different sectors. They request the data, or we provide the real-time data feed to them. So let me see whether, I think I'm going to stop here and then see whether you guys have any questions about what we have. Nathan, do you have any anything else to add?
No.
Okay.
That was a good overview.
This is fantastic. Could you explain a little bit more about the original $30 million grant or whatever, and the private sector investment for the MicroNet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the $30 million, it's the FEMA supplemental fund. So every weather station's like a building. So we got it through our New York State Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, but it's not them providing data, but through them, FEMA provide the funding to us. But that was just buying all of those instruments and build the whole network, but not for operation and maintenance. And then for Con Edison, they have this, I mean, all of those, their 17 stations, they are located on Con Edison properties. And they are simpler version of our weather stations, much simpler. And they don't measure everything what we have at our standard stations. And then
What was the name of the company again that you mentioned?
Con Edison.
Con
Edison.
Con
Okay.
Edison.
I think that's, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the utility company. Is that, Nathan, is that just for New York City or it's for?
Yeah, they basically run the power for New York City.
Mhm.
So they bought and implemented the the MicroNet structures, and what was their rationale?
That was more related to climate and also for their infrastructure. So they provide the funds, we design and bought all of those instruments and deploy them and set up everything, including both the hardware and software side. What we deliver is on our website. We deliver the real-time data to them.
Right.
Yeah, they
And-
were kind of tasked by the state to improve their climate monitoring in the face of global warming, especially, as low sea level is what New York City is. And so they
How-
contracted with us to install and maintain a climate monitoring network for them.
Another question would be, you mentioned that the New York State Mesonet is the most advanced version of this in the United States. Is that true? Is that what you said?
Yeah, there's a, well, many things, depends on how you, but definitely depends on how you define it. We are, I should mention, one of the things I forgot to mention. We were the first one, although right now other Mesonet started. We were the first one to have a camera at every site. Every 5 minutes, we have a camera image. Emergency managers and National Weather Service have been using this constantly for situation awareness. And we are also, in terms of those sub-networks, like what I said about profile and snow and flux, we were the first one, we are still the only one to operate such network. And then definitely urban network in terms of our standard network plus Con Edison MicroNet, we are the most comprehensive one too.
And how have other regions like us called you up and asked for any number of advice? How do you work with other regions, if anything? In US, there are about 30 state level Mesonets. We are not the only one. We are not the first one. I think maybe Oklahoma is the first one. I mean, Oklahoma definitely in terms of this tower is the gold standard. We learn a lot from them. A lot of things are quite similar. Besides, we got Nathan from them. We also learn a lot of things in terms of setup from them. So people have approached us with specific questions. You know, some of the things are standards, right? You know, the temperature sensors and people, there are different options. And for people in our field, they know which one they want to use, or they do some experiment. But like a camera, we are the only one, the first one. Right.
So they come for some, you know, consultation. We kind of, for those kind of simple questions, we consider it's a collaboration or our peers. We all are part of National Mesonet program. So we just answer their questions. But like what Con Edison approached us to set up a network, it would be a contract. It would be a whole budget, everything, you know, what we need, what they need to provide. It's a contract before that company and our university.
Yeah. And is there a Mesonet in Kansas and Missouri?
Actually, yeah, there's a Kansas Mesonet.
Okay.
Missouri Mesonet, it's more, they do call that Mesonet, but it's more of an agriculture network, Mesonet.
Okay. And how much did the MicroNet per site cost?
So the MicroNet, because it's a simpler version, every site is different. Roughly, the hardware plus the installation, the labor cost about $30K.
Okay. And do people buy the data, or because you're a public entity, you just share it publicly?
People, yeah, we are public, but we are not, we are self-supported, we are still underfunded. So we have a data policy, all private sectors need to pay us for data. And then other federal or state agency, we are still working with them, you know, work out solutions, how they can support us, because we need an operation and maintenance fund to maintain this kind of network. Yes, we do charge people. We do charge some, not for the academic community, but
Right.
academic community, they write a proposal, put some money in for us.
And have you, okay, beyond just the measurement, have you had any proactive groups say, okay, we can measure heat island, or we can measure, certain climate risks, and then we can actually intervene to reduce that? And have you had any group want to use this data as a baseline, as a before and after snapshot of sort of real mitigation work?
I guess depends on how you define that. I would say let's just use last weekend the flooding as example, right? And also for our macronet. Before our macronet, there was just 3 or 4 stations in New York City, and they were just they did not see very detailed rain gauge data. And so people do, like after that flooding, weekend flooding, they request flooding data regarding, where are those issues, where are the flooding going on? Is that because of more rain, or it's because of our infrastructure, right? That's kind of mitigation side. Because we have only operated for 7 years, from the climate monitoring perspective, it's not enough yet. But for extreme weather and climate events, definitely people use our data.
And have they ever, I guess, let me back up and explain to you what we're trying to do, and maybe this is kind of pushing the agenda a little bit, and because we don't have a Mesonet here, but there's certain private companies that have tech stacks, right? Which you're probably buying some of their devices or assembling your own. But what we're trying to do is take, let's say, and this might be possible with a micronet, or it might be possible with a combination of, a few sensors. It may not require a whole micronet even. But let's talk about heat island. So you have heat island in the center of town, in the inner city, and we can measure the heat fairly easily. But we know if we paint the street white or light gray, we know if we plant some trees and put some green roofs there as an intervention, that the heat will reduce. And we know that there's a correlation between heat and heat-related illness, energy, heat-related death. And so what we're trying to do is perform those interventions, measure the before and after, and have people sponsor those projects in the form of credit systems, like a local climate action credit marketplace. And so the data is actually the foundation of the credit, because it allows for a almost like a irrefutable evidence of the delta between doing nothing and the outcome. And so this is a broader conversation around outcome-based financing. And the data is the most important aspect to show efficacy, efficiency, and outcomes. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from in Kansas City, is we've essentially invented the system for, and Bob, we didn't really quite, tout our, all of our coattails or whatever, but Bob invented the LEED certification for buildings. So that was decades ago, and now we're kind of at it again to build this system for city credits focused on climate mitigation and interventions. So that could fall under carbon sequestration. It could fall under emission reduction. It could fall under risk reduction. Those are, I guess, what we realize are 3 different buckets. So, because you can have one without the other. And so, again, the data tech stack is a very fundamental part to that. So that's kind of what we're coming to you with, trying to learn as much as we can. Don't know if
yeah,
questions.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about because we have heard from other entities. They are trying to do that. I mean, the first thing is you want a better monitoring to find the hotspots, right? And then you have the intervention or you have the mitigation plan. You know, plan something green roof for all trees. And then you want to see monitor the impact of that side. So we have not directly worked with somebody on that yet, but there was some talking. So I think it depends on what you are looking for. We are more of your high quality end of the weather information. If you are just looking for, let's say you only care about heat index, right? All you need to have is temperature and humidity.
Yeah.
You are pretty much, and you have a tripod and a data logger. You can put something together pretty easily, work with some meteorologists or people in our field. And I don't think you really need, you might need like your 3 parts, you might need more than meteorology variables. So you want, like our Flux network, we also measure CO2 concentration. So you might want to measure air quality and CO2 flux, those things. Yeah, I don't know whether what you are thinking, you know, in terms of a design and implement this network. Definitely we have experience, but I'm not quite sure what specifically you need, or whether you really need us. Something like that.
I think that's fair. I think we're just trying to understand what is the Mesonet, and then understand there might be different, you know, as you have, basically you have, you know, 4 or 5 different types of site infrastructure depending on what, you know, exactly. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different types of installations. Which is helpful just to understand that. And as a case, you mentioned that you are talking to a few others about credits or mitigation. And who are you talking on that front?
It's more of what people talking about. It's not just specifically with us in terms of like Macronet. We have faculties working on the urban climate side. So rather than specifically projects with us.
Are they any entities, or are they just
No, it's more from the research side.
Oh, research.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I
mean, definitely we have expertise, experience, like what you see here, you can see my cursor. This is one of the Macronet station, right? You have a tripod and with all of the different sensors. Here's your rain gauge. And it's not just spec out of those sensors and put them out. It's also how do you collect the data and put all of those things, then get to the website. That's where the nascent part in terms of just within 2 minutes, you get what you need. And it's not just one station, that whole network. It's also inside, we have a pretty complicated data quality. You want to give people the real data rather than like we have a lot of weather stations scattered around the people's backyard. How much can you trust that, right? So that's the things, like I said, we tend to do more of a high quality side.
Right.
Yeah.
And what is the process of where the data is stored, how it's stored, how people access it? If let's say I need to purchase it as an entity, how does that happen at the moment?
We have a our website, we have specifically a data request. Maybe Nathan can see more. We can also put that link in the chat for you.
Okay.
Nathan, you want to see more? I mean,
Yeah, we do have our data archive, but on the website, we only make the last, the most recent observation, or in some cases, the last couple of days available for public viewing, because we do have to protect, our archive since we are not fully funded right now. So for people who want data, older than right now or older than a couple of days, they go to our web request form, which is on our website. And in there, they just indicate, what variables they're looking for, which stations, how they want the data packaged. And we review that, and some people get it for free, other people need to be charged. So for those that need to be charged, we'll send out, and we'll explain the situation because they may not be expecting an invoice, and then follow up with an invoice. And then once they pay it, or if we decide they have free access, then they will turn around and provide the data. We have scripts that will, provide the data for them at that point.
so Brian, you see on the screen, I share the screen.
Yeah.
That's our public website, and then for the general information, we have the data, and that brings to our data information, and then there's a data request page, and then you choose whatever time period, whatever variables, whatever the station you want.
Wow.
Yeah.
And let's say someone, yeah, never mind. Where is the data? What about the other side of the infrastructure, the data warehousing? How does that work?
Yes. Yeah, we're using Campbell Scientific data loggers, and those that's what actually samples the instruments. Some of them are being sampled every 3 seconds, some every 12 seconds, some every 60 seconds, and then the data logger compiles those into 5-minute observations, and that's what we generally make available to the public. Every 5 minutes, we have processes here that fetch the data from each one of our stations every 5 minutes to get that most recent record in. We have automated quality control processes that run on it. They factor in manual overrides that our QA staff can apply to the data, and then that goes in as input to create our kind of like public ready processed archive. And then from there, everything that is on our website or data requests or API feeds that we have in some cases, everything is generated from that processed data archive that we have stored on our server.
And that's a server at the university?
Right, yeah, there's a tier 1 data center here at the university, and our servers are housed in that data center.
Got it. Okay. I know that there was some physical space at some point that has the data on it, and I was just trying to close it in my mind.
I mentioned Campbell. Campbell's expensive, but their stuff does work. Campbell Scientific, they're based out of Logan, Utah. They actually have cloud services now, so basically you can pay them a monthly fee, and they will, you can give them specs, and they'll kind of figure out the best instrumentation for you, wire it together, send you these packages to install. And depending on how much you want to pay, they'll take care of the communications and even basic ingest and graphing and plotting and archival in their Campbell cloud. So
yeah. Well, this is a fantastic overview for me, and I'm at the moment feeling like I need to digest all the different capacities and the versions of installations that you have, and kind of compare that with, number one, what we need, and number two, what other technologies we're talking to see the mix and match for our use. It's really cool. We just met with FEMA. It's really cool to know that they originally funded it. And I'm curious about, if there probably you know, I don't know, Bob, you have any questions? I've been kind of hogging the questions.
I do, and the first of which is, would this have happened but for Sandy? Did it happen partially because of a response to Sandy?
In terms of the fundings.
Yeah.
Yeah, the funding definitely. So we started our proposing before Hurricane Sandy, and we did not know how we are going to get this huge fund to build this. And then Hurricane Sandy happened. I mean, that was bad in terms of the damage, but in the meantime, it was good for the network. Otherwise, where do you get this $30 million to build this weather network, right?
Right.
So that's how it happened.
Yeah, and that's kind of common among Mesonets. A lot of times there will be this idea to build out a network, but it takes some kind of large scale disaster to actually get funding. In Oklahoma, it was the Tulsa floods of, I think it was 1989 or something like that. The
Right.
idea had been around, you know, much longer than that, but it was those floods that ultimately provided the funding to get the network going.
And that was also funded through FEMA?
I don't think it was FEMA. I'm not sure where the money was. Again, this was back in the 80s.
Are you noticing any obvious, you know, with all the federal money coming down, any obvious connections that we should be aware of between IRA, ARPA, you know?
I mean, in terms of, most recently, Maryland just announced that their Mesonet. That's mainly funded, starting up fund. It's mainly came from their state emergency management. And then Wisconsin one, if I remember correctly, that's mainly for agriculture. So they get some fundings to start up their Mesonet. And then over west, a few of the Mesonets, it's a more drought monitoring. Yeah, I think in terms of starting the Mesonet, starting a network, they all have a slightly different stories.
And they're all, in some ways, they're all doing different things. Each kind of state does it their own way, but learn from each other if possible. Sometimes it's kind of full scale, all hands on deck, or meaning completely comprehensive, which it sounds like New York State is. Other times it's just agriculture or drought related.
Yeah, like most of the agriculture ones, they are tripod based. So they don't have they have a 2 meter or 3 meter rather than 10 meter towers. And they don't have instruments at 10 meter like what we have. They are slightly different and for their own purpose, like agriculture network, they might have a leaf wetness sensor because farmers want those information, but we don't have that one. So yeah, they all are slightly differently, but we share a lot of information, especially most of us are under the national, I mentioned the National Mesonet program. It's sponsored by NOAA, National Atmospheric and Oceanic Administration. Yeah, I think to some degree, if you look at others like New Mexico, there are a lot of stations, but most of them just tripods.
Yeah, and your neighbors there, Kansas, the Mesonet there is operated out of K-State. And, they're not as comprehensive as we are, but they have been around for quite a while. And we'll probably have a lot of good contacts for you if you're trying to get something started.
Mm-hmm.
The guy there, Chris Redman, I believe his name is, he's one of the most eager people that I think I've ever talked to.
Really?
He's great. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
If you have any relationships with somebody in Kansas or Missouri, we'd love an intro if that's possible.
Yeah, we can provide you because recently I was just looking at Missouri. Masonet, I can tell you, it's from the Missouri State University. It's the extension because it's agriculture. I will send you the link. Maybe Nathan can give you the Kansas one. Yeah, it's a good point from Nathan in terms of if you want to set up something in your area, it would be good to get connected with local people.
Yeah,
Operation and maintenance, and just to install those sensors. We need the people being there, and for somebody like us far away, maybe it's not that practical.
yeah.
And both of these, is it safe to assume that both of these systems in Kansas and Missouri are primarily focused on ag?
Missouri is, I don't know, Nathan, do you know?
Yeah, I think
Kansas,
Kansas is pretty ag focused as well.
Okay.
And in that case, are they also probing the soil for
They
carbon
are.
and all the rest? Yeah.
Oh, I'm not sure about for carbon, but they're probing for, temperature and moisture.
Okay.
Normally people don't do the carbon one. We do the carbon ones because we have that flux network. I don't know anybody else do the carbon except some special network. It's a more national level.
Interesting. Well, this is great. I'm learning a lot. Bob, any other comments or questions?
Yes. So I guess particularly for you, Nathan, since you started in Oklahoma, I'm interested to know if you wanted to start something. Let's say if Brian and I were a 3-person team and you were the 3rd person, and we were starting to try to envision what will it take for us to accurately record the changes in these areas that we're working in. Who would you look to as best partners in this Kansas City area? And we're, as you know, we're right on the state line. So while most of our work at the moment is in Missouri, it's easy to imagine it will be in Missouri and Kansas.
I don't even know how to answer that. That's a little outside my realm of expertise. This is where I can put on my hat and say I'm not a meteorologist, technically. But no, I don't know. Honestly, I would probably start reaching out to, from a blank slate. I might start with the every state. Most states have a climate office, and I would probably start with the Missouri State Climate Office to see if they're aware of any contacts in the state or any efforts already underway to start some kind of network. And failing that, maybe the National Weather Service. And also if there's any, most of these Mesonets, most of them are run out of universities. So if there's a good university in the state that has, a meteorology program, that would also probably be a good point to start.
Okay. Thanks. That helps.
I just put Kansas Mesonet and Missouri Mesonet there, so you guys should be able to find all of the relevant people to talk to. Most of the Mesonets are hosted by the university, like us.
Why do you think that is?
Because we hold a high standard and we try to, I think part of the reason is I mentioned operation and maintenance, right? Because outside people just think, okay, each weather station is a building, like we got the money, and then they say, why do you need more money? In order to give you the, the high quality data, the truths about the weather, about the heat index, we really need to, visit the sites, do regular maintenance, calibrate our sensor, do a lot of quality control, And university in some way, because we can use students, we have university in some way back us up. Say, this year I don't have enough money, university can help us. And also with the access to both students and faculty members, so that's quite important. Like for us, for our operation center, we staff our operation center with interns from our department every semester.
That makes sense. Well, Bob, I got a chance to ask him my questions. Any hearing what we're trying to do you have any advice for us about turning the data and the delta between the baseline after the intervention into an eco asset? Do you have any thoughts or?
I think that's something kind of a research. You really want to work with your local university, like Nathan said, approaching those Mesonet, like us, all of those Mesonet are interested in expanding their networks if there are resources.
Right.
Yeah. And then that means because they all are hosted in a university, they're not just, they can expand their network, they can do research with that.
Makes sense.
Well, first of all, this is enormously helpful, which we appreciate. And secondly, I guess my last question would be, if we get a little further along, would you be willing for us to check in with you again, maybe to critique some of the things that we've established preliminarily, to kind of be sure that we're staying on the right path, the most efficient path that would create the most impact? Would you be open to that?
Yeah, I think we can, but back to what we both suggested, that you approach your local Mesonet, because
Right,
they
sure.
would be way more helpful than us to you
Yeah.
guys. And including like what Nathan said, like Penn State, Pennsylvania State Mesonet, they do use the Campbell Certificate, the instrument company. They basically provided your whole package, including the data storage on clouds and data visualization. And so it depends on, definitely they would be more expensive because companies, they make profit. But if you want to do something, really, it's a whole package, working with your Mesonet people, because they know they have similar experience and expertise as us. And so you don't need the high-end things like what we have, the profile. You only need this basic weather station information.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we will definitely do that. Yeah.
Mhm.
I thought your perspective, that you built a more sophisticated system, might be valuable after we know more.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I like what you guys trying to do. Maybe something we can expand in the future. And maybe some collaborations, you have your region of some macronet mitigation, climate mitigation, or resilience plan or something. And we might think about it that for New York City. So definitely we would be interested in what you are doing and provide whatever we have. I don't think we have it exactly what you are looking for in terms of the latter part of the things.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. I want to tell a very brief story for Nathan's benefit primarily, but for a year I was the visiting chair of the Department of Architecture at the University of Oklahoma,
Oh, wow.
and called the Bruce Goff Chair. And your first visit to campus, they give you basically an all-day tour of the campus and the community, and they give you a list of 50 sites, and you can choose from them what you'd like to see. And one of the things I checked was the weather center. And I thought I was imagining it was about weather and tornadoes, et cetera, and research. But they pull up in front of this enormous building next to the stadium. And I checked the weather center and they said, this is the weather center.
Mhm, mhm.
So they
Yeah.
could play football in the snow if they were going to be playing a team that would be in the snow that weekend. I just, it blew me away.
Yeah, it seems like football drives everything.
Seemed that,
I'm curious what year that was.
oh, let's see, it's would have been around 90, probably.
Okay.
Well, thank you both. We appreciate this.
Thank you so much, and maybe we'll get connected with the local folks, and then maybe circle back once we kind of have our plan and get any reactions, and maybe share what can be taken to New York, and just to do that. And I appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you for reach out, and good luck on your project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey. Bye-bye.